No, that's very true.
And so, yeah, so I feel very fortunate, Duncan, that when I'd come to the end of my Christian journey, that I was allowed to get off the bus.
The one thing that you mentioned in there that I want to touch on was the having a low economic footprint, which I talked to this guy who wrote a book recently called Excellent Sheep. It's all about kids with schools, elite colleges. They're the sons and daughters of.
You talked to that guy?
I did, yeah. Um,
I love that book.
oh yeah, yeah.
That book was incredibly formative. Yeah, when I was at USC, I read that book. I quoted that book. Yeah, gosh, that's wonderful. I'm
Yeah,
glad you got to talk to him.
and I know you have a podcast. I'm sure if you're interested, he would definitely respond to you. If he's going to respond to me. But the thing that he was talking about was that a lot of these kids, having grown up in sort of an upper crust society, they have in one sense they have all the options in the world available to them, but in another sense, because of the lifestyle they're used to, their options are actually quite narrow. Um, do you think that in many ways that we, we sort of limit ourselves to just based off of financial quote unquote necessity?
Yeah, I mean, I remember a friend of mine who was a marriage counselor out in California, in Orange County, telling me about talking to this couple whose marriage was coming apart because they were both working so hard and they just didn't see each other anymore, and their sexual relationship had faltered and their intimacy was gone, and they were talking, and he said, well, you know, couldn't you couldn't one of you couldn't you both cut back, or couldn't one of you leave their job? And um and they were like, oh no, like we are stretched out, we're at the edge, we're just barely hanging on. He said after the session was over, he walked out into the parking lot and he saw them getting into their Mercedes and her into her Lexus. And he looked up their address and realized that they lived on a house overlooking the beach. And he thought, you know, if you sold that house and moved to a house, not talking about going into poverty, but it's like if you lived, 5 miles inland and drove Hondas, he said they could have quit those jobs easily, or cut back, or cut to half time. And he said the problem wasn't that they were so materialistic. He said the problem is that when he brought that up, he said the next meeting he asked them about that, and they looked at each other and they said, wow, that never occurred to us. Like, they had never thought about living below their means, because they had, they were in a culture and they were around, everybody was trying to, get the house on the beach. Everybody was trying to get the cars. Everybody was trying to get the look and the vacations and whatnot. And the weird thing is I think for most of us, it's a little bit like that old David Foster Wallace joke about the two fish swimming along, and the old fish comes up to the two little young fish and says, hey, how's the water? And the one fish looks at the other and says, what's water? Like, you don't even know the atmosphere you're swimming in. You're like, it's just a part of your world. And I think for a lot of us, the economic, especially for people who are talented, bright, privileged, educated, it's just the water they've been swimming in. And the idea of that this is a choice, and that you could significantly lower your economic footprint, and that would relieve all kinds of pressure and create all kinds of new options for you. It's not so much that people are like, I would never do that, I value my money too much, or I value my, it's just never occurred to them. They just never have thought about it. They've never known anybody that did it. We used to joke when I was in mission work and about being downwardly mobile, but like, there just aren't a lot of people that sort of embrace the freedom that comes with living below your means.